How far would a man go when his prejudice nearly turns deadly? And what happens when justice arrives in plain sight? The afternoon sun reflected off the manicured greens of the prestigious golf course as Marcus Hayes walked slowly toward the clubhouse, his eyes scanning the fairway for any sign of danger. He had come to enjoy a quiet day, far from the chaos of the city, yet he knew too well how quickly appearances could betray him. Officer Dylan McCarthy, 42-year-old white cop, was already there, leaning on the golf cart, smirking as he spotted Marcus from a distance. McCarthy's eyes narrowed with barely concealed disdain, a dangerous mix of arrogance and prejudice. Marcus noticed every twitch of his hand, every shift in stance, and his heartbeat remained steady. He had faced judgment all his life, but today felt different, heavier, like the air itself carried the weight of unspoken tension. As Marcus passed the putting green, McCarthy suddenly swung his golf club in a wide arc, aiming at Marcus' head with a roar of anger fueled by his own assumptions. Time seemed to slow, the club slicing the air, the sunlight glinting off the metal. Marcus ducked instinctively, barely avoiding a strike that could have ended him, his calm eyes locking on McCarthy's, silently challenging him. The nearby golfers gasped, some frozen in shock, some shifting uncomfortably as the tension escalated. McCarthy's lips curled into a sneer as if to assert dominance, his voice rising with authority and entitlement. "You don't belong here, boy, better watch yourself." Marcus didn't flinch, didn't respond with anger. He merely took a step back, analyzing every detail, every movement, ready for what he knew was coming next. Bystanders murmured, unsure whether to intervene, their judgment clouded by assumptions about Marcus' presence on the course. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of authoritative footsteps echoed across the greens, a firm, synchronized rhythm that demanded attention. 12 federal agents appeared from the edge of the course, moving with precise coordination, their presence instantly shifting the power in the air. McCarthy froze mid-swing, his eyes widening as realization dawned. The once confident officer, who had wielded power without question, now stood paralyzed, surrounded, unable to hide the fear that crept into his chest. Marcus remained calm, unshaken, his posture dignified, while McCarthy stammered, unable to form words, unable to reconcile the authority before him. The agent's cold, disciplined gaze met his, making it clear that the tables had turned in an instant. In that silence, the injustice of assumptions, the danger of unchecked prejudice, and the weight of history collided, leaving everyone on the green stunned. Marcus finally allowed a small, quiet nod to the lead agent, acknowledging the intervention without breaking his composure. The murmurs of the golfers grew louder, but the lesson was clear, the reality undeniable, and the fear in McCarthy's eyes spoke louder than any words ever could. If you respect Marcus' courage and calm in the face of injustice, leave a comment with respect below, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories like this. McCarthy's knees shook as he realized he was completely surrounded, his usual smirk replaced by panic. The 12 federal agents moved with silent precision, forming a protective perimeter around Marcus Hayes, their eyes sharp, scanning every angle for threats. Marcus didn't move a muscle, his calm presence radiating authority without a word, leaving McCarthy unsure where to focus his fear. Sweat beaded on the officer's forehead as he lowered his club slowly, the air thick with tension, and the murmurs of onlookers filled the background like a distant warning. Marcus' mind raced, not with fear, but with observation. He noted which agents were closest, who had weapons drawn, who moved subtly to anticipate McCarthy's next irrational move. McCarthy's chest heaved, frustration and humiliation warring within him, knowing that his authority was gone in the blink of an eye, replaced by accountability he had never faced. One of the agents stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Step away from him, officer. You are in violation of multiple protocols." McCarthy swallowed hard, eyes darting to Marcus, who gave a subtle nod toward the agent, signaling complete trust in their control. The surrounding golfers were silent now, some whispering under their breath, others frozen by shock, all witnessing how assumptions about race and power could unravel in moments. Marcus finally spoke, voice measured, steady. "This isn't about fear. It's about respect and consequences." McCarthy's fingers twitched, his face red with anger and shame, realizing that the world he thought he controlled could shift instantly under the weight of law and justice. One agent moved closer, gently but firmly getting McCarthy away from Marcus, while another secured the perimeter to ensure no one else could interfere. The officer's authority, once absolute, crumbled like sand slipping through fingers, and for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to face the consequences of prejudice and aggression. Marcus remained poised, unshaken, his calm dignity filling the space more powerfully than any threat could, making it clear that true strength comes from discipline, intelligence, and integrity, not fear or privilege. The agents maintained perfect formation, their presence a living reminder of accountability, ensuring that the injustice McCarthy tried to inflict could never be repeated in their presence. Slowly, the tension eased as the crowd began to realize the depth of the lesson unfolding before them. Marcus exhaled quietly, satisfied, yet aware that the world would not always be so instantly corrected. Today, however, justice had arrived, sharp, undeniable, and complete. The sun continued to shine on the green, but now it illuminated a truth that could not be ignored. Prejudice can be challenged, power can be balanced, and courage combined with calmness can alter outcomes instantly. Marcus Hayes felt the weight of countless eyes on him as McCarthy was finally guided away. But the tension in the air did not dissipate. The murmurs of the surrounding golfers and onlookers grew into whispers filled with fear and curiosity, each person struggling to process what had just happened, the realization that a man's life and dignity could be threatened simply because of his skin resonating deeply. Marcus's calm gaze swept across the green, noting every expression, every subtle gesture, the way power and privilege often blinded those who wielded it recklessly. He could see McCarthy's arrogance shattered, the officer's usual bravado replaced with a nervous twitch in his jaw and shaky hands, yet Marcus knew this was only the beginning, that the true lesson had yet to be delivered. The 12 federal agents, disciplined and precise, maintained a protective formation around him, their presence a living shield of authority, a silent message that injustice and aggression would no longer go unchecked, and Marcus silently thanked each one for their composure, knowing it was their skill and unity that amplified his quiet strength into an undeniable force. As McCarthy was led away, Marcus allowed himself to finally exhale, but he knew the encounter would not simply end here. His mind raced through scenarios. What if McCarthy returned with backup, or tried to manipulate the situation again? He could sense the underlying tension in the crowd, the mixed feelings of fear, confusion, and fascination, and realized how often black men were judged unfairly, their every action scrutinized, their presence perceived as threatening, no matter how calm or intelligent they were. Marcus felt a surge of responsibility, not just to himself, but to every person who had been belittled, underestimated, or threatened for reasons beyond their control. He had to make this moment a statement, a lesson that could ripple beyond the green, beyond the witnesses, and resonate in a world that often turned a blind eye to racism and abuse of authority. The agents adjusted their formation subtly, scanning for threats, their eyes sharp and unwavering, while Marcus stepped slightly forward, allowing his presence to dominate the space. The crowd seemed to shrink, the energy shifting as if magnetized by his calm authority. McCarthy's colleagues and friends began whispering among themselves, some attempting to justify the officer's behavior, others shaken by the sudden reversal of control. Marcus knew that words alone could not convey the magnitude of what had occurred. It was action, composure, and courage that spoke louder than any lecture, and he felt a quiet pride in how the situation had unfolded so far. Every second felt stretched, the suspense almost tangible, like a silent heartbeat echoing across the green. Suddenly, one of the senior agents spoke in a low, commanding tone that cut through the tension like steel. "Officer McCarthy, you will be held accountable for your actions. Any attempt to escalate will result in immediate consequences." McCarthy's face paled, his eyes darting nervously, realizing that his assumptions of power, privilege, and fear were now utterly irrelevant. The agent's words were precise, authoritative, and a reminder that justice did not bend for arrogance or prejudice. Marcus watched quietly, his expression calm, almost serene, yet every fiber of his being radiated an unyielding strength that no one could ignore. The murmurs of the crowd softened into an awed silence as Marcus raised his voice, steady and measured, addressing both McCarthy and the onlookers. "Power is meaningless without responsibility. Authority without respect is a threat, not a right. Every choice has a consequence, and every action reveals the true character of a person." His words hung in the air like a verdict, impossible to dismiss, impossible to ignore. The sun reflected off the polished golf clubs and green grass, but it was Marcus's presence, his calm courage, that cast the longest shadow, a reminder that dignity, intelligence, and composure could overpower fear, aggression, and prejudice without a single act of violence. Finally, McCarthy was escorted fully away, and the agents maintained their perfect formation until the crowd began to disperse, whispers of awe and respect following Marcus like a trail. He allowed himself a small, quiet smile, knowing that while the world was far from perfect, moments like this carved a path toward justice, equality, and understanding, one act of courage at a time. The lesson was clear. Respect is earned through integrity, patience, and intelligence, and those who abuse their power will face accountability sooner or later. Marcus Hayes felt the tension in the air slowly transform from fear to cautious respect as McCarthy was finally restrained and led toward the waiting vehicles, his face a mixture of disbelief, shame, and anger. Yet Marcus remained calm, his presence commanding without a word. The crowd had begun to disperse, but the whispers followed him like shadows, the realization that courage, intelligence, and integrity could overcome raw arrogance and racism, spreading quietly yet powerfully. Every step Marcus took was measured, confident, as he allowed himself to observe the subtle shifts in those around him, the murmurs of the shocked golfers, the uneasy glances from McCarthy's colleagues, and the awe-filled expressions of bystanders who had silently cheered his restraint. The 12 federal agents flanked him still, a wall of disciplined authority, ensuring that no one dared test the limits of power or privilege again, their calm precision amplifying Marcus's quiet strength into a formidable presence that could not be ignored. He thought about the countless times people had underestimated him because of the color of his skin, the assumptions that intelligence, composure, and calmness were weaknesses rather than strength. Every whisper of doubt and every judgment he had faced fueled a steady fire within him, a determination to never allow injustice to go unchallenged. He understood that this moment was not just about McCarthy or the incident on the golf course. It was about every black man and woman who had been judged unfairly, every voice that had been silenced, and every injustice that had been overlooked. Marcus's mind moved through a careful plan. He would ensure that this incident became a lesson, not only for McCarthy but for everyone watching, that accountability, dignity, and courage were far more powerful than fear, prejudice, or brute force. The federal agents signaled him forward, and Marcus took a step onto the open green, where the remaining witnesses had gathered, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity, fear, and newfound respect. McCarthy's arrogance had been replaced by a tense awareness, and even his colleagues who had once shared his prejudices now looked uneasy, as if realizing that the world was no longer governed by assumptions and inherited privilege alone. Marcus's voice, calm but resolute, carried across the green, "Judgment without understanding is ignorance. Power without responsibility is tyranny. Every action, every choice has consequences, and every person must answer for what they do." Each word resonated like a bell of justice, echoing over the manicured grass, and the crowd shifted slightly, recognizing the undeniable truth in his statement. Then, as McCarthy's eyes darted nervously, one of the lead federal agents stepped forward and firmly placed a hand on the officer's shoulder. "Officer McCarthy, your actions today will be investigated. Any further misconduct will not be tolerated. You are accountable for your behavior and your decisions." The weight of authority, precision, and discipline in those words rendered the officer silent. A stark contrast to his earlier aggression, and Marcus felt a wave of quiet satisfaction knowing that justice had been served without unnecessary violence, without theatrics, only through courage, intelligence, and calm observation. Marcus finally allowed himself to turn and glance at the witnesses, noting the change in their expressions, the subtle respect and recognition that had grown in the air, a recognition that real strength did not come from intimidation, fear, or brute force, but from integrity, patience, and unwavering courage. The sun gleamed across the green, casting long shadows, but it was Marcus's presence, his quiet dignity, and his unwavering calm that left the longest, most lasting mark. He knew that moments like these mattered. They reminded the world that equality, respect, and justice were not just ideals, but achievable realities if courage met opportunity with intelligence and restraint. As the agents escorted McCarthy away, Marcus exhaled deeply, allowing himself a small smile. This was not an ending, but a beginning, a reminder that courage, respect, and calm resolve could transform fear into understanding, prejudice into acknowledgement, and injustice into accountability. His message had been delivered, his presence had spoken louder than words, and the lesson was clear. Dignity and integrity would always triumph over arrogance and bias. If Marcus, courage and calm strength inspired you, type respect in the comments, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories where justice meets bravery.